All right, we are here on the 23rd with Andrew and Ashley. Video module, I think it's 18. Forgive me if it's not 18. Does that sound right to you guys? 18?
I don't know. I really don't.
Last time we talked about buyer appointments, and we talked about how to set a new buyer appointment, and I think it was 17. So this week we are looking at the buyer packets.
I think you're right.
All right, so I'm going to do some reading first, and then we're going to get into the buyer packet and review page by page with Ashley and Andrew. So in summary, the buyer packet and presentations are put together for you by the staff. Make sure you have these with you on every buyer appointment attended. Should be one of your goals to ensure you go through the presentation at every initial new buyer meeting. This will help build the credibility and ensure you stand out from the other agents that the buyer may meet. Point right there is that this isn't normal. So you're not, the other agents aren't meeting with the buyer and like have anything, right? I mean, they're lucky if they even go over the consumer notice. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you're showing up with, I mean, they'll have a printout of the MLS sheet, but that's about it. So this whole, you guys are small business owners now. So every small business has a process, and we call it, this is how we do things, right? And it's going to feel different from the other agents they've met with. So, as long as you have this with you, the goal is to get some time at the appointment and try and go through some of it at least. Ultimately, the goal is to guide them through the packet and presentation and get to the buyer agency. Homework is to read the documents and make notes with questions. Next, you'll need to role play the presentation with sales manager and ultimately give the presentation back. And that will happen. So key points to remember: plant the seed and expectation of review of some paperwork and a summary of how we work when we meet the buyer for the first time. So that's like that's like the most critical thing. So if you show up at a appointment with somebody, you guys, they have no interest in like going through this document, right? Here's the document for those of you watching the thing. The recording, when you meet somebody at a house, they just want to see the house and leave, right? They don't care about you or us or what you have to say, or they certainly don't care about signing an exclusive thing like that they have to work with you. So there's a process that helps them to understand that there's value in chatting with you for a few minutes before or after the showing. Number one, so that you can talk freely in their favor whenever you're showing them the house. Mm-hmm. And number two, so that as they get more serious about buying homes, they know what their options are. Since this is one of their biggest investments, it typically makes sense. It's a little bit more work for me to have to go through a couple of those basic things about what they're entitled to in Pennsylvania, but I just owe it to you as a buyer to chat with you for a few minutes so that when you get more serious about buying a home, you know what your options and what you're entitled to in Pennsylvania before you make purchase decisions. So we're going to take a few minutes at this showing and just chat about that. And that'll enable me to talk a little bit more freely to you about the home and the process. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So that's what I'm saying to them. And that happens when we're on the phone with the buyer. So it's, back to review what we talked about the other day. It's buyer info sheet, with structure of a call, which is LP Mama. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it starts with, a great script that you'll learn is, hey, Jason, this is Dave over at Hooke, and I just saw you inquired about 123 Main Street. What questions do you have about the property, and might there be a good time for you to take a look and preview the property? Right out of the gate, you can ask those two questions because they raised their hand and said they wanted information on this property through Zillow. What questions do you have about the property? Might there be a good time you can preview the property? Jason typically didn't call to preview the property, although maybe for luck he did. Typically he called because he had a question about like how long's it been on the market? Is there a shared driveway? Is the basement finished? And so he says, oh no, I was just calling to see if the basement was finished. Oh, great, Jason, I can look that information up for you here in our multi-list. While I'm pulling that up, and I'll get that for you, is there a good time for you to preview the property? Time number two. Jason didn't call to preview the property, but now Jason's like, well, maybe I could just look at it. Mm-hmm. Like that seems pretty no hassle. So at some point you might, like just by saying that right off the bat, Is there a good, just every time you're answering a question, and is there a good time you want to preview the property? It's going to increase your probability by probably 4, 5, 6 times if you do that on every call of actually getting appointments with people. And so they might just say, well, I guess, we could look at it. All right, great. Is maybe 5:30 tonight or 5, 6:30 tomorrow a good time for you? Sure, I guess so. Okay, great. And by the way, that basement is finished. So is 5:30? Let's confirm 5:30 to 6:30 in the calendar for tomorrow. And will it just be you or you and somebody else looking at the property? Oh, me and my spouse. Okay, great. I got it in the calendar confirmed. Now, and then here's a follow-up that we often will say. Let's make sure to block out an extra 15 minutes. So I'm meeting at 5:30. The showing will usually take a half hour. Let's book it for 45 minutes because just so I can talk a little bit more freely about the property, we'll go over just what you're entitled to in Pennsylvania as you get more serious, and also just a document called a buyer's agency that allows me to talk freely and in your favor as we look at the property, okay? Yeah? All right, we'll go over that before we leave the property. And so now you've stated what the process is. We're going to look at the property and then we're going to meet for 15 minutes and go over this document. Or you can say we're going to go over this document and then look at the property, right? And so you've explained to them how we work and what the order of operations of the appointment, and you've explained that you'll need an extra 15 minutes, right? And you've got their consent to do that. Now you can go back through and get the rest of the information about them. So, before I let you go, Jason, just let me learn a little bit more about your search. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. If you were to find the perfect property, do you already have an agent that you'd be working with, right? LP Mama. So he says, yeah, we already signed a buyer's agent. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jason. I'm not going to be able to show you that property. I can send you or your realtor the information on it just as a courtesy, but you should really work through the agent you're already committed to, right? Or he says, I haven't signed anything yet, but I looked at a property with an agent. Well, now you can use your judgment. You're like, well, I don't want to step on that agent's toes, but obviously you want to make sure your agent's serving you well. I see you're calling on another listing. Your agent isn't reaching out. I want to make sure that if I'm representing you, that I'm getting you properties, and you don't have to be calling other realtors. I'm getting you properties quickly and getting you the information you need. Why don't we go ahead and confirm this appointment? I think it makes sense. And we'll review our process, and if you see more value in that other realtor, I think you should work with them. And I always encourage you to interview a couple of realtors. But I think it makes sense for us to just meet at the property, go through our process. If you see as much or more value in our process, then you can always call us back and work with us. How's that sound, Jason? Right? So you're not saying anything bad about the other realtor. We don't want to steal. But if they haven't signed anything and all they did was look at a property with another realtor, I don't think it makes sense to give that appointment up. But it also doesn't make sense to bash anyone, but it's just I think it makes sense, Jason, to have a conversation, look at the property, and let you know your options and let you know what our process is. How's that sound, right? And so what we've done is we've started the conversation with, do you have time to preview the property? We've explained that we'll need an extra 15 minutes before the appointment just to chat about some documents the state requires us to go over. Bless you.
Thank you.
And that we'll just review some documents so that I could talk freely about the home. And then we've confirmed it, and then we've gone back through LP Mama. And if we get to agent and we have to give up the appointment, we can. Or we might say, and Jason, by the way, have you talked to any lenders yet? He says, no, I haven't, but I know that my credit isn't good. Jason, instead of looking at that property at 5:30 at the appointment we just confirmed, how about I do a 3-way conference call with a really good lender that's local? I'm going to get them on the phone with you, no pressure, obligation to do anything. Well, let's not put the cart before the horse. I want you to have your piece about finances for you and your family before you start looking at property. So I'm going to have Jessica Regan from GMH Mortgage give you a call. I'm going to be on the line. She's going to have a 10-minute conversation and see if you can get pre-approved, look at what your interest rate's going to be. And then if you get that, then we'll be armed and dangerous, and we'll confirm this appointment for another time. So how about keeping that appointment for tomorrow at 5:30? And are you going to be there that I can make sure that Jess gives you a call? So we've already got a time block from Jason. We just backed out of meeting him at the home because it's not the best use of our time until we know, because he admitted he has bad credit, and so it's more prudent to get on the phone with a lender at this point and get a pre-approval. Plus, we don't want to be the agent that's wasting other listing agents' time with unqualified appointments. So if we hear they're struggling in the financial end, it's wise for us to have that conversation with them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is all stuff that we're doing on that call. And then number 2 on the 30-day fast start, build rapport at the appointment first, and then remind them we'll do a quick view of how we work, and in case they decide they'd like an advocate looking out for them in the future. And go through the packet and presentation, but don't read it. Remember, it's more of a prop to help you talk with them about the process and our team than it is something you're going to read. So to those 2 points, you meet Jason at the property. Hey, Jason, good talking with you the other day. So glad you can make it out today. Remember, we talked on the phone before we looked at the property. We're just going to go over a little bit of information from the state and about our process. That allows me to talk freely about the home once we get inside. So let's just, we'll walk in the kitchen here and just grab a countertop, and we'll just go over a few things and then take a look at the house. How's that sound? So now you've said about your process twice. And it's no different than you go to the doctor's office or you go to the mechanic to get your car serviced. Like, you sit down, you go up to the check-in, and they're like, you're going to fill this thing out first and give me all your insurance information. And then you're going to wait, and we're going to call you, and then we're going to weigh you, and then we're going to take your blood pressure, and then you're going to sit in a room, and you're going to wait again, and then the doctor's going to come in, and that's going to be about 45 minutes from now, and he's going to be with you for about 15 minutes, ask you some questions, diagnose you, write you a script, and leave. That's what you do when you come into our business. It's the way we work, right? What they don't do is like this total ambiguous, uncertain experience, right? And that's not a real business. And so, but that's what happens in our industry. And so again, when you talk to them on the phone, you're going to explain the process. When we meet at the property, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And then when you meet them at the property, hey, Jason, good talking the other day. Thanks for coming out. Remember, we talked on the phone. First, we're going to chat about some stuff and just allow me to talk freely about the property. Then we're going to look at the property. Then I'm going to see if you have any questions. Okay? And so that's what you do. You meet them at the property, build a little rapport, re-explain the process, and then go in and do the packet and the presentation and don't read it. And the reason we say it's more of a prop is because every person you meet is going to have a different demeanor, and some of them are going to be super time sensitive and like very aggressive and like, I don't want to read any of your crap. Like, I just want to look at the house. You're like, hey, I totally understand, but the truth is, as I mentioned on the phone, Jason, I know you guys are busy. I'm going to do this really quick. But in order for me to show you the property and talk freely about the property, I have to review this stuff with you, right? And so if I can't show you and talk freely about the property, which is true, because if I'm not your buyer's agent, I'm somebody's agent, and I'm actually a sub-agent for the seller in the state of Pennsylvania, right? Which means I have to represent the seller's interests, which I'm not prepared to do because I've never met the guy, and that's just not how I practice. So if I'm going to show somebody the house, I need to be able to talk freely and in your favor. And so in the state of Pennsylvania, that requires me to go over buyer's agency, Jason. So either you can call the listing agent, there's their number, and they can show you the house and continue to represent the seller, or I could show you the house today, but I need to go over some stuff with you that the state requires, right? So which is it going to be? It's up to you. We're here. It's totally your call. And they're not hearing that if they're pushing back really hard, you've told them this, you're not in a bad place because you told them what you were going to do on the call and got his consent to do that. And so at this point, you're not in an awkward situation. You're just reminding him of what you already said, and you're restating why you need to do it. And so this is how, this is a point where it's going to require some practice on your end to feel confidence to be able to say that with people so that you're not the agent who's doing 5 new buyer appointments a week and not getting anything signed and totally wasting your time and your family's time, right? This is, you said about boundaries. This is it. This is how you create boundaries. And I like to use the words firm and kind. We're very firm and we're very kind, right? And that's how we create boundaries and make sure that we're acting professional and all that good stuff. So it's more of a prop, and you get that pushback. You can say, we're only going to take a minute, Jason, and just go through some of the stuff. I know you're busy. You don't want to hear it, but I have to do it, and here's why. Or you get that super analytical person who says, yeah, I want to, I have it, and they're there for an hour reading this thing. Like, well, what's that say? You went too fast. Was there fine print there? something, what's that down there? So you get both ends of the spectrum, and that's why it's more of a prop, because you're gonna be a bit of a chameleon. You're gonna be like the person that you're with, and if they're analytical, you're gonna be analytical. If they're a high D and driving, you're gonna be fast in driving, and you might zip through this in a minute and a half, right, and then get them to see the house. At the end, it says here, attempt to trial close, such as, does the concept of buyer's agency make sense, right? So does all this make sense? Okay, great. You see any reason you wouldn't want somebody who can talk freely and just, looking out for you in the process? Okay, great. So, we'll just do a temporary one for a few weeks, and then if for some reason we're not a good fit, you can cancel at any time. We're not bound to it. Just initial here. Okay, make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll role play this process a lot, and you'll see some different videos of different people doing this. I'm going to show you, and then you're going to shadow people and see the different ways that they do it. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Any questions on that? All right. So I'm going to stop this recording here.